Let's get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Osterhout. I'm the executive producer here at Lincoln Square, and I'm very excited for this discussion today. Michael Brenes is an old friend of mine, and he's an incredible historian. Let me just go through your
Oh
your
God.
little bio. Uh, if I can pull it up. Go through your hold on. The bio. I'm trying to pay attention to chat and do this at the same time, which is always
Not easy. Multitasking.
multitasking. Um, so you're a common friend of ours. Before I get to your bio, sent me a piece that you wrote for the New Republic last week. It's called "What if the political pendulum doesn't swing back?" And I think for me, it brought up a lot. I think a lot of us have been thinking about this moment and every moment as if it's the only moment in history,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
social media has really amplified that sense that everything is urgent in this very second. And in fact, that no other second exists outside of this this 1 second, and we forget that the present is a product of the past.
Right.
Um, we're also, I think, forgetting, and some of us are waking up to this, and I see it in chats when we do these lives a lot. That holy shit, there's everything that gets broken right now is either going to get fixed or it's not going to get fixed, or it's going to be reassembled in some way that is indistinguishable to us
Mm,
currently.
mm.
And so I want to talk about that article in a sec, but I will say, Michael Brenes, I found the bio. Michael
Yeah.
Brenes is the co-director of the Brady Johnson Program in Grand Strategy, and he's a lecturer in history at Yale, which perhaps you've heard of it. It's a school. It's quite good,
Some
I
people
hear.
have heard of it. Yeah. Some people.
Uh-huh. And he's a senior non-resident fellow at the Center for International Policy, and also the co-author of The Rivalry,
Mhm.
How Great Power Competition Threatens Peace and Weakens Democracy. And I want to talk about this here in a
Sure.
little bit.
Sure.
But first, I want to start with this article. So uh, the idea is, Arthur Schlesinger Jr. is a sort of central figure in this piece
Mhm.
because he spoke a lot about the pendulum of the American politics. We've heard about a lot. Can you
Yeah.
just introduce us to this concept?
Sure. So actually, the concept originated with, well, first, thanks for having me on, Sam. It's a pleasure. And thanks for everyone for joining us. So Arthur Schlesinger Sr., actually, Arthur Schlesinger Jr.'s father kind of started this idea that in the 1930s, that American politics and American political history functions on a pendulum. And that Arthur Schlesinger Sr. actually put precise dates to liberal eras and conservative eras in American history.
Which
And he
which
wrote,
kind of bore out, right?
yes. So that's the thing, is that, he wrote this, I think, in 36. There's a piece called The Tides of American Politics that appeared in the Yale Review. And he put these precise terms. And he says, the pendulum swing against the New Deal, like Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal. That's going to occur in like the mid 40s and late 50s, right, early 50s, and then you're not going to see a liberal era until 1963. And sure enough, the Republicans took both houses of Congress by 1947. You have Dwight Eisenhower as president, who was Republican, not a very conservative Republican, but still Republican nonetheless.
Sure.
And no, John F. Kennedy is elected in 61, and that ushers in a somewhat liberal era as Kennedy responds to civil rights and other issues. And so this is idea that, American politics swings back and forth between liberalism and conservatism. And Arthur Schlesinger Jr., his son, updated this idea in the 1980s after Ronald Reagan had just won another a very massive election, as akin to FDR's election in 36, where FDR
Sure.
won almost every state. Reagan won every state except for Minnesota. And it's like, oh my gosh, here we have now a Reagan revolution. What does this mean for American politics? And he says, don't worry, Schlesinger Jr. says, don't worry. American politics will swing back to the left by the 90s. And one of the things that I think happens is that doesn't quite happen. There are some swing. I mean, obviously Bill Clinton is elected in 1992. He's a Democrat. But then the idea of sort of politics swinging back to a New Deal kind of, or JFK, or Lyndon
Right.
Johnson, Great Society era, that doesn't really happen. And so I thought about an opportunity as people were talking about the pendulum swinging back. John Meacham, presidential
Right.
historian, was on Daily Show saying, "Oh, the pendulum's going to swing to an AOC presidency." I'm like, "Well, is that true?" Like, we'll see, but it hasn't happened over the past 40 years. And so that, as you said, like that's where the piece comes in. It's like, what if things are broken to a point that they can't go back, and what does going back mean? In an era where Donald Trump, yes, he'll be gone eventually. He'll be gone. He'll be out of 2020, 28. Hopefully, the Republicans don't try to get him to run again. I mean, we'll see what craziness comes out of the GOP. But overall, like, Trump will go away. But what happens if he's left a legacy that can't be reversed? To your point, and then where does the Democratic Party and liberals overall enter into that conversation? How do they respond to that?
Well, so let's go back then to the sort of the Reagan Revolution. Schlesinger was not, as I understand it, a total fan of that
No,
the policies.
no, he was not.
um, and we all, I think the more sort of uh, I don't know, the racist voices on the right during the Obama years talked about they called the pendulum the backlash. Like, you're
Yeah.
forcing this sort of multiracial coalition down our throats, which is just dog whistle bullshit. Um, but I mean, this started this sort of move away from the pendulum it's not a perfect swing, right?
Right.
It's almost like one of those pendulums that swings around in a circle and at random intervals. But it started a long time ago, this sort of deviation. How did Trump? Uh, I don't know that it. I always hesitate to assign Trump some masterstroke of brilliance
Yeah. Right.
in his process, but how did he take advantage of that swing? And now, how is he using the sort of deviation for his own benefit?
Think Trump, like other kind of autocratic, or people who have leaders who have autocratic tendencies, and they exist. Viktor Orban, I mean, Putin, obviously, responded to a moment after the 2008 financial crisis,
Mhm.
when it seemed that Obama was going to enter into politics and really transform the American welfare state. The picture, I think, the cover of Time magazine, when Obama's inaugurated in January of 2009, is like his face sort of superimposed on FDR's body, and like
Right.
he has the cigarette kind of, and the the top hat, and all those things that we see from the FDR inauguration in 33. And that didn't really materialize. You got, obviously, the Affordable Health Care Act, important piece of legislation. But I thought, and I think, people feel that they didn't really, government didn't really respond to their concerns.
Right.
Inequality got worse. Housing, as we know, got more unaffordable. Jobs, some people got better jobs, a lot of people didn't. So I think there was a moment where people were like, "What's good for government? What's good about government? What is government doing for me?" And you combine that with the war on terror, where American foreign policy doesn't seem to be doing very good things with its unprecedented power, and the concern about forever wars. And Donald Trump captured that. He's like, what are we doing in Afghanistan? And if you can't kind of afford it, he seized on this populist moment. And the Democratic Party didn't really have an answer for that. I mean, they lost in 2016. Biden comes along in 2020, of course, captures the presidency. I think largely because of COVID and the reaction to Trump and what Trump had done over those
Sure.
4 years. But I think the systemic problems that the financial crisis exposed didn't really get resolved. And so what Trump has done is he's sort of played into our worst, the worst aspects of ourselves, our worst enemies, our worst angels, just put it that way, and say, like,
Right.
the problem is immigrants. The problem, like, that's why you can't afford a job, or can't get a job. That's why you can't afford a house. And sort of blaming other people. And the Democrats kind of didn't really have an alternative to that. And so the piece kind of ends with this question of like, okay, what's going on with the Democratic Party hasn't worked to stop Trump, and maybe it's Mamdani or maybe it's somebody else, but it can't really be a situation where the status quo is going to work to stop a Trump or Trump-like figure going forward. And I think that's the kind of question for me is like, how do you deal with not just Trump in the short term and in regards to the midterms, and hopefully, again, the Democrats capture the midterms, but what do we do in the long term when there'll be another Trump-like figure come along?
Well, and I think that's an interesting point that I had never really thought about it framed this way, that, Obama took a lot of heat from the left.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like so many of us were saying, "We were promised a fucking pendulum." Like, "Where's our
Yes. Right.
pendulum?"
Right.
The pendulum never got far enough as much as we wanted it to.
Right.
And is that a product of the Democrats playing it safe, or lacking a sort of strong strategic vision, or the absence of a catastrophe that they're trying to address? Or, I mean, the Democrats bear some responsibility clearly for Trump and Trumpism. How do you see the party system playing into this current
Yeah,
moment?
I think that's absolutely right. I would say, all the above, D all the above, that the
Mhm.
Democrats don't really have a long, I mean, I think now they don't really have a long-term strategic vision for how to take back not just the White House or Congress, but, make government good
Right,
again for
right,
people, an affirmative vision of government. I mean, there's people within the Democratic Party who have that vision,
sure,
but I think in terms of a party, there's what you saw in the 2024 election was the party saying, "Oh, don't worry, things are not that bad, or they'll get better." And that might have been true. Had Kamala Harris got elected, maybe things do get better. Maybe inflation goes down. Maybe who knows? But that's not a comforting political message, and it's not a strategy. It's not a strategy for dealing with people's anxieties and concerns. And I think now the parties even divide. I mean, you've seen this with Mondani and the AOC and Bernie's. Like the party's divided. Like, what's their strategic direction? Do we go further to the left? Do we try to go back to some sort of Obama-esque politics?
right,
And I don't, and I think different states, if you're looking at this on a national level, different states are going to need different types of democratic leaders and different type
sure.
of, I don't think a Mamdani is going to get elected in, Alabama, parts of Alabama, but, like how ultimately do you think about building a coalition? And I think this
Yeah,
is where I'm coming in. How do you think about building a coalition on a national level that constrains and ultimately gets rid of the sort of MAGA coalition, and overrides the power that it has in terms of capturing our politics, and to the point that Republicans now control most of our state houses. They certainly, right at this point, control like basically all three branches of government. Like, how do you think about building a long-term strategic vision, a coalition vision that gets us, not just like, oh, Mamdani's the answer, or um, you know, uh, like Shapiro's the answer, or Governor Shapiro's the answer, but
right.
like, what ultimately is the meeting of the middle, and how do you think about a left liberal, Democratic, left Democratic centrist vision that could get people on board for, again, a more affirmative vision of what government is, instead of xenophobic nationalism, which is what currently the Republican Party is offering.
Well, and I think, we talk about this sort of funneling of wealth and power to the very top, to the exclusive. And currently, the system of governance is so exclusive that just one person is represented in this government, right?
Yeah,
It's just the
right.
one person. That's the only one that this government currently serves. And I think there's an interesting thing about Mamdani. I think centrists were kind of up in arms, like, wait, 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 don't put all of your eggs in the Mamdani basket. However, they were looking at policy and not
Yeah.
at process. And I think you're absolutely right. We tend to, on right and left, because of our news cycle and because of our weird social media pressed libertarianism that is kind of weirdly pervasive in all of our culture.
Mhm.
I'm the superhero of this story. We're looking for people and not for process or result.
Right.
So you pin your hopes in a person, and hope then that they do the right thing for you, when maybe we ought to be thinking about what does the world look like that we want to live in,
Correct. Right.
and then approach those policies in that way. And the world that we want to live in is different for those of us who live in Tulsa and those of us who live in upstate New York and
Right.
in New Haven. Um,
Right.
so I want to talk then about this, current system. We're being hollowed out.
Mhm.
Uh, like I said in the beginning, everything is broken, and it seems to be intentionally being broken.
Mhm.
Um, we also have a buildup of I mean, sort of de facto private police force for a regime
Yeah.
that is better funded than not only some countries' militaries, but some countries alone. What? How do these ingredients? What worries you the most about, say, the next year, the next 2 years, the next 4 years?
I think the damage that the big beautiful bill
Mm,
will do, and I think what's on a macro scale, what's worrying about that is that this is, and I say this in the New Republic piece, this is an indication of kind of a new era of conservatism where it's
yeah,
not just cut government and slash benefits for people. I mean, that's the GOP has always been about that, cutting the welfare state. I mean, Barry Goldwater in 1964 wanted to cut Social Security, but to that point, I mean, Goldwater was eviscerated for that idea,
right,
and now they just don't care. They're just like, well, we're just going to slash benefits, and they're going to make up some excuses, and then when the damage gets done, they'll pivot and blame Joe Biden or AOC or whoever
right,
for this, and then the corollary to that, or what's happening, sort of coinciding with that, simultaneously to that, is this reallocation of resources, government resources, to social welfare projects, or entitlement programs, depending if I want to call them, to Medicare, to
sure,
SNAP, to Social Security, to ICE, and to the DoD. And it's like, okay, like we're not gonna do, basically, like the GOP said, we're not gonna do any social welfare anymore. We're gonna give billions of dollars to ICE to round up people, potentially even American citizens, and deport them. And I think that's a really, to your point earlier and how you opened this conversation, like what cannot be reversed. I don't know, to the extent that, given the current condition of the Democratic Party, they could reverse that, in
right.
a sort of in a holistic sense, and also in a comprehensive sense, also a long term sense. This is something that has been a concern of mine, that the Democratic Party has been largely on board with increases to the Department of Defense, and I think certainly the military plays a significant role in American life, and the military is necessary for things, like supporting Ukraine. But
Yeah,
that we're looking at a $1 trillion defense budget, of which now billions is now going to ICE, and I think that's not a country that I think is healthy. That's not a healthy democracy when you're not allowed to take, or you're just refusing to take care of poor people, and um, you know, uh, single mothers, and then you're just allocating that to ICE, and then rounding up people, and without due process, and allowing the Marines to patrol the streets of LA. That's just not a healthy society. And I think also, and I'm speaking outside of myself, and I think that's a country that most people don't want to live in. I think, you see that in the polls, you see that in terms of where Donald Trump's popularity is going. That's not a country that most people want to live in. So I am, to put more light, positive spin on this, I am encouraged by that. I don't think
right.
this is sustainable, in the long term. But to the extent to which it can be reversed, I don't know. That's a big question mark.
Yeah, it's wildly unpopular, obviously.
Right.
And I think a lot of questions we get in the chat in these lives, are saying, what's it matter? There's not going to be an election next year. They're going to have some emergency thing, the burning of the Reichstag, this kind of situation. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I understand
Yeah.
that impulse, because why else would someone uh, spend this amount of money and do things that are wildly and very visibly so unpopular
Right.
if
Yeah. Yeah.
they thought they could be, you know, kicked out of office,
Right.
or kicked out of power. So it does seem, it seems dangerous. Do you think, speaking of the unitary executive um,
Yeah.
situation, are the Democrats going to be able to take off the ring and throw it into the mountain once they have that power?
Again, TBD. I mean, I think we'll see with the midterms. I was just seeing, um, you know, images from Democratic town halls, and people were like, "Well, why don't you impeach Donald Trump?
Mhm.
Impeach him." And they said, "Well, you know, we don't have. You need the House of Representatives to do that, and we don't have that." And so it's kind of like, well, wait till the midterms. My point would be, yeah, okay, the midterms are important, but we can't wait around for the midterms to save us. That
Yeah.
the urgency of our, I think I'm quoting the piece now, but the urgency of our times demand that's, or paraphrasing it, demand that we do something more than just wait for the pendulum to swing back and wait for the midterms. And I think that is again, TBD for the Democrats. It's like, to your point in the beginning about long-term coalition building and strategy making and what's the vision. I think that's where this comes in. And
Right.
so to have a situation where the Democrats win the midterms and potentially win the White House. Again, I don't think this is what's happening is very popular and sustainable. I think Americans are largely not going to like what's happening. But in the end, if they just win the White House and the midterms and they don't offer anything, again, long term that can constrain a Trump like movement or MAGA movement in the future, then the thing's going to go back, and it's going to go
Yeah.
back to potentially something that's worse. And then this is, and this is something that I think we should consider. Is like things are really bad right now, but things also could get worse. And it's a lesson that I've learned where I thought in the Trump 2.0 era, I was like, okay, we went through Trump 1.0 and we saw how that happens. And, like we
Sure.
survived, but now things are escalated. And I think things could get even worse. It just depends upon, again, to me, the power of liberalism, the power of the Democratic Party, to have a long-term vision again for change and sustainability, and also push back against things that um, or efforts to erode American democracy on a small and also large scale.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Democrats. Uh, I mean, again, I go back to your framing. The pendulum is such a beautiful metaphor for this because the pendulum has sustained citizens for a long time. The
Right,
hope that you can lose this and be okay because
right,
at some point you will win.
right,
And I think the Democrats haven't been able to offer the vision of winning.
right,
And even winning, they lose, right? They still are not providing a vision of something that is, uh, engaging and engrossing and inspiring to
right,
people. So I guess that's an interesting point that if Democrats do take back, either the House or the Senate or both, and the presidency, even if they don't do anything with it, uh,
right.
that could be bad.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that, I mean, again, obviously the Democrats aren't responsible for everything, but they aren't responsible for the policies that come out of the White House and come out of Congress.
Mhm.
But to the extent to which that they've, you know, um, lost to the point, to your point, lost so badly and lost so wholly, obviously something isn't going right. And I think that, um, that's a testament to how much, the Democrats are just, we're back in kind of like a 1980s moment where Reagan won overwhelmingly, in the sense, not I think obviously Trump's policies are very different from Reagan, but Reagan won overwhelmingly, in 84. He captured blue collar workers, he captured union voters, he captured even some blacks and Latino voters. it looked like the Democrats were effectively dead. They came up with this new coalition that relied upon suburbs and relied upon, cities and, trying to capture the coastal areas. And that worked for a while, but now that doesn't work anymore. And so
Right.
then what's the question? The question is like, what ultimately replaces that? And I think there are various alternatives out there, various ideas out there, but I think, having a leadership that recognize that, I think is a stepping stone to coming up with something that is better and, again, more affirmative and gets people to vote for the Democratic Party once more, along, because of their vision for government and what it can do for all Americans, but particularly those who are suffering and in need of help.
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I think the Democrats, are still the answer and the party that we absolutely need.
Right, right,
And I agree there are Democrats who are doing incredible work, and, pushing a a good vision. Patrick,
right,
Schelling in the chat says the GOP isn't offering anything inspiring, and I think, he's totally, absolutely 1,000% right, except it's inspiring to racists and fascists. And
right,
but the proof of Patrick's, comment is that, like we talked about the polling for Trump is disastrous. He's just
right,
not inspiring, and that's
right,
an opportunity for the Democrats. Um,
right.
Mike, I we are running low on time, and I wanted to talk about this book.
Oh, sure.
But can we come back? Are you around next week?
I'm around next week, so
So
let me
this
know.
I would love to schedule this. My this I think this book ties in a surprising way to the discussion we're having.
Hmm.
But I'm also curious because it was published in January.
Yep.
Not much has changed since January, right? Uh,
Yeah, not a whole lot. Status
so
quo.
yeah. So if you don't mind coming back next week, I would love to have you and we could talk
Yeah,
about the
sure,
book and talk about the book in context of the past 200-ish days, and
sure.
the previous term and all of that. But um, everyone, Michael is on Substack. It's Michael Brenes. Uh, Michael Brenes one, I think, is your
Yes.
handle. You
Yeah.
just search and
Mbrennis one. Mbrennis
yes,
one. Yeah.
and we will, when I repost this discussion, I'll tag you in there and also link to the New Republic piece.
Great. Well, thanks
Really
so much.
beautiful piece. Yeah, thank you so much for joining, and to be continued. I'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, Sam. See you next week. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.